Hi guys, I'm Audrey Callaway, and I'm really excited to talk to all you guys about why I think America's grasslands are restoring themselves. So these towers, like transmission towers, high voltage, Con Edison power lines, are the things that made me want to go to college, which is weird because they're not really an environmental thing, but it's what made me actually want to act on this kind of stuff, and I'm gonna get into that in a second. But that wasn't the only thing that made me want to get into environmentalism. I was always interested in that kind of stuff. I was always interested in the outdoors, and I think a lot of other people can resonate with that. I was a big fan of birds since I was a kid, still am a big bird fan. I rock climb, I get outside with my family, they're big outdoorsy people. And so I always had this kind of exposure and connection to the outdoors. But like many other people here I'm sure can resonate with, I was stressed out like all the time, like Jack was saying. The second I started finding out about climate change, I was just freaking out all the time, and I didn't want to do anything about it anymore, you know? I was like, I wanted to save the planet when I was a little kid, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, there's no point. Like, that's it, we're done. And even though I was still like getting out inside in nature and stuff, it felt like every time I would go outside, this like sort of like fairy tale magic bubble would be broken by like something happening. It would be like there's a busy road nearby, there'd be trash in the stream, and I would immediately be out of it. It was kind of like an all or nothing situation. And for me, one of the biggest examples of that was these power lines, like these transmission towers that were cutting through all of my backyard and this big cleared area of land. Right here, you can see it. It's called the right-of-way. And it's basically just this huge area of land that is cut out and prioritized for these transmission towers. And I looked at these, and I hated them. They were kind of the epitome of like, oh, this is the area that is not designated for wildlife anymore. We're cutting out the wildlife, and we're putting in infrastructure. And to me, I hated it, everything about it. And so naturally, I went up and I checked them out. And I was kind of going up there, kicking my feet and being like, all right, you know, this is gonna suck. And it didn't. It was full of this wildlife and things that I hadn't even seen in the surrounding forests. And it was a huge moment for me. It was, what did I see? I saw turkeys, bobcats, snakes, deer. All of these species that I hadn't seen anywhere else before were all making their home in this area that I thought was kind of dividing the wildlife and making it harder for animals to thrive. And instead, there were all these new species. And I spent a lot of time up there. It was kind of where me and my friends hung out. This is where I went, and this was like my access to the outdoors, was this transmission tower in my backyard and these big power lines. And so, I mean, like, a lot of time. I was up there all the time, and I saw it through the seasons, and I saw it changing. And for me, one of the biggest ways I connected with the outdoors was through bird watching. Big bird fans. Any bird fans, make some noise. And I would see all these different species that I did not see in the forest, and I only saw them in this like grassland prairie. Any bird fans want to shout out? See anything in here? Anybody? Christina, I know you got that. But these are all species that do not live in the forest. They're prairie birds. They're animals that I hadn't seen anywhere else, and they were thriving here. I saw them all summer when I was going out to look, and it really changed my perspective. I was thinking, this is an area that is separating wildlife. This is an area where wildlife is not going to thrive. And it was thriving in an entirely new way that I hadn't even thought about before. Grasslands are one of our most affected ecosystems. Birds are one of our most declining grassland species, and almost 360 million acres of habitat have been lost, grassland habitat. And so grasslands are declining at a rate much faster than the forests. And a lot of this is because it's the first land to be developed. You know, you make it into farms, and the farms grow back as forests, and you lose this really precious biodiversity that you had before. In one of my lectures this week, Walt Pullman said disturbances create mosaics of different habitats. And he was talking about beavers, but I really saw it in these towers, and I saw it in the ecosystems that had been created that I hadn't seen before. And even though it's not a natural system, and even though it's not something that was created by nature, I thought that, you know, it is something that has tremendous natural value, and it really changed my perspective. I'm not the first person to see this. Colorado in 2022, they passed a bill that basically says if you are a transmission tower company, if you're creating these high voltage power lines, you have to do it with the communities in mind. And a lot of this was because people, when they think about environmental change, they think of big, ugly things in their backyard. They think of solar panels, they think of wind turbines that they don't mind the presence of, but they don't want to see right next to their house. And so this was Colorado's way of getting around it. It basically meant you have to make it accessible for trails, and you have to make it accessible for public recreation. And that way, it's more of a community thing. And it worked pretty well. There are plenty of trails in Colorado that are now very popular and take advantage of these transmission towers. Also, as a rock climber, any rock climbers might recognize this. This is the Power Lines climbing area. Power Lines with a Z, of course, because they have to be really cool. And it's the only area in Harriman State Park that people are allowed to recreate outdoors, and a lot of that is because the land is already cleared and it's already accessible, and people can get into their backyard and have more access to this because the transmission towers are already there. And so, well, yes, the area is deforested and it might not be what it once was, there is a natural value to it, and I think we really need to take advantage of that, especially as we want to electrify more. We want to use more solar and wind and water and not as much greenhouse gases, and that's going to require so much electrical infrastructure. I think it's kind of wasted potential to make these transmission towers and clear all this land and do nothing else with it. I think to build pollinator areas or grassland habitats or trails or climbing areas or areas where people can get outside gives it more value beyond that. I think seeing it as this black and white, it's infrastructure or it's natural area, can give you that crippling feeling that I was dealing with, which is, okay, all or nothing, and right now it's nothing. And I think having more of this multifaceted perspective where what else can we do with this even though it has to be here, I think that can really bring us towards a better future. If you want to see this for yourself, go out into Centennial Woods. There are trails, Powerline trails in Centennial Woods, and you'll see what I'm talking about, different grassland species, all these different animals. So yeah, I think the biggest thing about this is the fact that it's not so black and white, right? I think challenging our own ideas of what is natural and what is man-made and how we can bring them together and actually make a difference in places that we have to clear. So, thank you.